You're listening to Fusion Patrol, a listener-supported podcast. Each week, we take a single episode of a science fiction TV series, movie, or audio and overanalyze it to within an inch of its life. Welcome to the discussion. Hello and welcome to another episode of Fusion Patrol. I'm Eugene.
And I'm Kenneth.
And tonight we are looking at Season 1, Episode 7 of The Invaders, the episode Nightmare. Synopsis. Prologue. In Grady, Kansas, a young schoolteacher, Ellen Woods, brings study materials to student Fred Danielson, who is out of school due to an injury. When she arrives at the Danielson farm, she discovers Fred, seemingly fit, plus his father, and also the town constable, Ned Gabbard, working on a mysterious machine. They make to kill her and pursue her, and she flees in terror. Instead of pursuing on foot, they use the machine to send a swarm of locusts after her. She narrowly escapes by hiding indoors. Act 1. David Vincent, having read the report in the papers, has come to Grady to question Ellen about what she saw. The town, in general, and her boyfriend, Ed, in particular, don't want him there. Ellen has had some emotional problems in the past and spent time in a sanitarium. They all think that questioning her would be too much of a strain. One of the people protecting Ellen is the school principal, Mr. Ames. Vincent tracks Ellen down to Ames' house and, over Ames's objections, Ellen agrees to see Vincent and assure him that she was imagining what she saw. Vincent doesn't believe her, and he badgers her about it. Ames kicks him out, and later, Ed beats him up. The constable and one of his deputies find the unconscious Vincent and take him to jail. Act 2. Vincent is let out of jail and is taken by Constable Gabbard and Deputy Braden to the next town, where he can catch a bus and never return to Grady. That is a lie. They are both invaders and are taking Vincent to his death. He manages to wreck their car and escapes across a field of crops. Meanwhile, Ellen, surprised that Vincent actually believed what she saw, begins to have doubts that it was her imagination. She tells Ed, "As God is my witness, I saw those men, and there was a box, and it brought the locusts." Ed, still believing she's delusional, is supportive and will stand with her until she forgets all this nonsense. Later, Ellen decides to investigate, but Ames refuses to let her leave the house. For her own good, of course. She breaks free and drives off, heading towards Danielson's farm. Gabbard has summoned the locusts who are pursuing Vincent. Ellen sees him and the locusts, and they barely make it to the silo building in time to be saved from them. Inside, they find strange equipment and insectariums with various insects inside them. Vincent takes some of the powder that's all over the crops and puts it on a convenient chunk of meat. He places it in with the butterflies, and they devour it in seconds. Act 3. Vincent and Ellen leave the silo and find the crops outside stripped bare by the locusts. The constable and Danielson see them and give chase, but they escape in Ellen's car. Vincent sends Ellen back to Ames's house, where she should call Ed to be with her. Vincent makes for a payphone to call the state police. When he reaches him, they tell him it's not really their jurisdiction, but they'll have someone look into it. The state police call Constable Gabbard and tell him where Vincent is so they can help him. At Ames's house, Ellen is beginning to get suspicious of him. She can't reach Ed, and she's beginning to get scared. She begs the Lapham sisters to find Ed and bring him to her. She begs Miss Havergal to stay with her so she won't be alone with Ames. When Ed does arrive, Havergal has put Ellen to bed in her room. Ames prevents Ed from seeing her. He claims it's a doctor's orders that Ellen shouldn't see him and that she should be taken to a clinic in Wichita immediately. Reluctantly, Ed agrees. Ames will be taking her to the clinic immediately. Vincent sees Gabbard coming and escapes. Act 4. Vincent heads to Ed's house and tries to convince him that Ellen's life is in danger. He convinces him to check up on the clinic that the doctor's orders supposedly came from, and there is no such clinic. Gabbard arrives looking for Vincent, and Ed covers for him. Ames and Havergal chloroform the unwilling Ellen and take her to the car and drive off. Vincent and Ed head out in pursuit and track her to Danielson's farm. A fight breaks out, and several of the invaders are killed, but Ames and Havergal escape to the silo, where they activate a self-destruct mechanism, destroying all evidence. Epilogue. Ed and Ellen are sorry, but not sorry. They're not going to tell the FBI what they saw. Ellen isn't willing to raise the alarm and be disbelieved again. Okay, Nightmare. What do you think?
It needed at least one more pass before someone filmed it.
Yeah, okay. I'll go with that. There's a few things in this that don't quite gel.
I can think of two off the top of my head. I'll take the first one. The narrator, or maybe it's the second one. Either way, the narrator starts off by telling us that Grady is 30 miles from the geographical center of the country. And later in the episode, Vincent says it's 3 miles.
3 miles. Yeah. Yeah, I noticed that too. Don't know if that was a script problem or maybe Vincent read or Dennis read the line wrong, or who knows. But yes. Interestingly enough, there is a town about 3 miles from the geographical center of the United States, but it is Lebanon, Kansas.
Yes, it is, and it's close to the Nebraska border.
Not close to Wichita, as seen in that picture.
Precisely.
Now, I thought I was going to get one of those. Well, I figured this was a fictional town because that's what they do. But, it could have been based on a real town and they just pretending to be, give it a different name. But I thought I was going to get a sneaky one up because I thought that I had read somewhere or even seen a documentary on it that, the geographical center is a thing that they measure through, going to guess, calculus. Because it depends on how accurately you measure the curves and the shapes of the coast, right? So it has happened in several. I can say for a fact that there is a monument in Taiwan that says this is the geographic center of Taiwan, and you can stand at that monument and you can have your picture taken and I am at the geographical center of Taiwan. But in fact, it has been moved up a hill about 150, 200 meters as they measure the island more accurately. And then you go up there and there's a second monument. This is the actual one. That's the old one. And I could swear I had seen a documentary about the competing towns for the geographical center of the United States. But as far as I can tell, according to the Wikipedia entry, it has not moved since 1912. So, okay. I must be wrong. Or maybe it's the geographical center of the United States, including Alaska and Hawaii, which is much further north and west.
Well, I forgot
where that is.
I took it to be the center of the contiguous.
Yes. Kansas is the center of the contiguous U.S. That's right.
But
it moved when we added Alaska and Hawaii.
Yes. That would make sense. But
that's not what they're talking about.
Oh, I got all geeky on this, and I went and I checked the maps, and I pulled up Google Earth, and I got a picture of the marker at the geographical center. And it was really, I did.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have a ball of string, next best thing, geographical center of the continent.
Yep.
Or the country, yeah. I wonder where the geographical center of the continent is.
Good question.
That might be closer to Arizona.
Maybe, because you have to take consider Mexico and
then there's Canada,
so forth. Yes, and Canada goes in. You have to consider the Aleutian Islands and
all that stuff. Yeah. Did they count it to the Panama Canal? Is that where the official break is now? I
think it may.
I'm sure somebody's worked it out.
Yeah, someone has.
I'm sure it's worked something out. The one thing I think about this episode is this is the weirdest one yet. This is the most alien, wacko idea. All the others have been, we take over somebody's mind or we take over a business, kind of spy infiltration stuff. This is science fiction infiltration stuff. With the insects and that is fitting because we can't go any further without acknowledging that this was written by John Newble.
I looked that up.
And John Newble is, the second I saw that name, I'm like, Dr. Loveless on Wild Wild West. this is his. I don't want to say it's his claim to fame, because the man does have a bunch of other things, but not a lot of stuff you would see in television.
Well, on the other hand, he did write Bread and Circuses for Star Trek.
Yeah.
And because I have certain guilty pleasures, including very bad science fiction. From 1958, The Screaming Skull.
Yeah, that's the other big one that people might know him from. But, I went through his episodes, though. For some reason, I was thinking that he only wrote Dr. Loveless episodes. But he did, I don't know, 2, 4, 6, 8 episodes for the series, and 5 of them are Dr. Loveless episodes. That's The Night the Wizard Shook the Earth, The Night the Terrors Stalked the Town, The Night of the Murderous Spring, The Night of the Green Terror, The Night of the Surreal McCoy. And just to give you some idea, The Night of the Wizard Shook the Earth was kind of, I don't want to say boring, but this is the introduction of Dr. Loveless, the brilliant genius who's invented television and flying machines and a super explosive, and he's an outsider, and he feels like he deserves a birthright. It's not the craziest of the stories, but The Night Terror Stalked the Town. Gosh, I don't even remember which one that is. I think that's the one where he created plastic surgery double of Jim West, and he created a town that was surrounded by an electric fence, and it was filled with mannequins and phonographs and stuff. It's an odd one. Murderous Spring, he invented LSD, or a murderous version of LSD, and he was going to drop it in the water supply and cause everyone to kill each other. Green Terror, he invented a robotic knight in armor and was pulling the Robin Hood thing. And the Surreal McCoy is the one where he creates dimensional portals. He can create paintings that are actual worlds, and then using a tuning fork arrangement can pass through them into other dimensions. It's like Newble definitely was on a different plane.
Yes.
And even the other ones that he wrote, like The Night of the Man-Eating House, which was a ghostly house that caused people to age. The Night of the Returning Dead, I think, was probably a backdoor pilot. That one's the one that had Sammy Davis Jr. in it, helping Jim and Artie with his psychic powers by pretending to be a Confederate ghostwriter. And the one that stands out, though, and it's not one that I care about, is The Night of the Two-Legged Buffalo. And it stands out because it features, I don't want to say Samoan, but Pacific Islander of some kind, Prince, coming to the United States and to be educated and to sign peace treaties. And really, he wants to start a war and bring his proud traditions back to his island instead of being a vassal state to the United States, that kind of thing. And when you know that John Newble was in fact raised in Samoa, is half Samoan, but was, well-educated man, it kind of fits, because there's this theme now that, like, Dr. Loveless is a guy who is outside, right? And Newble's work seems to present a lot of that kind of, but also weird. So this is, to my mind, this is also the first weird episode of The Invaders.
So it fits in that way.
And, I like weird.
I like weird when someone does it well. This is one where, I watched this episode twice, and the last time was within the last 24 hours of this.
Mm-hmm.
And the second time around, I was watching for one detail.
You're trying to figure out what the heck was going on with the locusts and the dust.
The dust. That was the second time around, because I was looking for other details the first time around.
Doesn't make any sense, does it?
No. And I was thinking, there's no dust in the town when the locusts are flying around.
Oddly enough, this is more like the third or fourth time I've watched it, and once just very recently. And again, this is one of the episodes that I wrote a blog entry for Fusion Patrol quite a long time ago, and I was ragging on the fact that it doesn't quite make sense. There's a disconnect between what are they doing? Do you have a machine that can draw the locusts in to swarm, or do you have a dust? Because the dust is everywhere. The dust are on the crops when Ellen is running through them. We see that. The dust is on the crops when Vincent is running through them. We see that. We see Vincent find the thing of dust and kind of sniff it and compare it to the dust that's all over him from the fields to really drive home the fact that this bowl is the dust that's out on the crops, which presumably they're dusting with, quite literally crop dusting with. And so, if all they need to do is to spray this dust on something and the bugs will eat it, then what do you need to control the locusts for? And if you can control the locusts, what do you need the dust for? There's a huge disconnect. And I think on the last watch, it kind of, I don't want to say exactly, I think I know what they were going for. The dust makes the insects eat the crops or whatever it's on. And we'll come to the meat here in a little bit. But you put it on crops and the pests are drawn to it and will attack it and eat it voraciously.
As they did in one scene.
And that should be good enough, right? That should be good enough to wipe out our crops. But then the second thing is they have a device which can actually cause locusts to swarm and come to a location. So you get the locusts to swarm because that is not a phenomenon. That is not a phenomena that happens without specific conditions. And then once the locusts are swarmed, they've got the dust all over it, and they're going to make sure that they clean it out. But it's not very clearly. It's like a two-stage attack. It's draw in a swarm and then have the plate laid out for them. It's like this is an extra tasty plate for you. I think that's where it's going, which does make more sense than my first pass through, where it's just like I don't get it. But then there's the scene with the chunk of meat, which is very. I wish it was a chunk of ham because then I could say it was very ham-fisted.
Ooh, good.
But unfortunately, I don't think that was a chunk of ham. So I think that was very low quality meat. But whatever it was, I think it was a cow of some kind. Just sitting there waiting for someone to put powder on it and stick in with the
butterflies.
And this messes up my whole system because the butterflies, without the waves or anything, you put that in there, the butterflies are all like, whoa, I'm on that. And they swarm, which is a creepy shot, a little fake, but creepy shot, and then strip it to the bone. You're like, wow. So their plan is to get people covered in the dust and have them eaten?
Well, let's continue with the butterfly theme.
But butterflies can't eat meat.
No, they can't. And on top of that, toward the end of the episode, and as is Constable, the Invader Constable, whom Vincent pushes into the butterfly tank, he gets eaten off screen, and we see the red glow. But was he in dust?
I don't know. I guess he's been out in the fields, but so's everyone there.
Yes, but he didn't look especially dusty.
No, he did not.
This is why I say this script needed at least one more pass.
A polish. I think it definitely needed a polish. And, okay, I say butterflies can't eat meat. You say, oh, but it's the Invaders. I'm like, okay, fine. Let's go there. Butterflies don't have any mouth parts, right? By the time they become butterflies, they have given that up for a little sippy straw. And you could then rightly go, but these are insects mutated or changed by the Invaders. And my question is, are they? It's like, are they? Why?
No, I don't see.
Why butterflies?
See no evidence.
We've got locusts already.
Yes, there are locusts. They're doing what locusts do.
You don't need butterflies, and so you have to go to the trouble of let's use genetic engineering for the sake of argument. Genetically re-engineer butterflies so that they have mouths that can eat flesh, so that you can put something on the flesh so that butterflies will eat it. I don't I mean, apart from the fact that it's creepy seeing butterflies eat flesh and you go, "Ooh, that's like the friendliest," apart from ladybugs, butterflies and ladybugs are like the friendliest bugs you can get. Right? People are like, "Ooh, ladybugs and butterflies, how cute." And then seeing them devour things and eat meat, and you're like, "Ooh, we are totally screwed as a race if the butterflies start eating us." But it doesn't make sense to waste your time doing that when you've got the locusts. And locusts are really good at destroying crops. And locusts are really good at destroying crops, and people know locusts are really good at destroying crops. So you have the plausibility factor there. Like, no, if locusts eat a town of crops, David Vincent isn't going to just go, "Oh, locusts eating a town's worth of crops. That must be the invaders."
Not at all.
Right? If it weren't for the box and the people trying to kill her, and they're trying to control it, made it into the news, Vincent would never have come to Grady, Kansas because of some locust attacks. But if somebody had said butterflies had, stripped the flesh off my farm animals, Vincent would be there. So, mm,
Yeah, and
not
and locusts are one of the most anciently feared insects. Since
yeah,
antiquity, there have been swarms of locusts destroying crops.
unless you only have one solitary lone locust, then they're just rattling against the world in rage.
Yes,
But yeah, nothing as sad as a single solitary locust.
I know.
uh,
I did freeze the frame on the newspaper article about the third locust
okay.
attack. I believe I sent you the screen capture. And aside from the headline, all the text around it is perfect gibberish.
Good for them. Good for them.
I mean, those are actual words around it, but they don't say anything when you put them together in that order. Text.
Yeah.
And back in 1967, nobody was going to freeze the frame in 1967.
Not to mention that, and think about this for a second. I have a personal anecdote. So once again, this comes back to Taiwan. When I first went to Taiwan in 1998, and when I first met my wife had a series of, you can buy a lot of shirts in the night markets, and a lot of the shirts in the night markets have text on them in English because English is cool, but it doesn't make any sense.
Chinglish, right?
Yes, but here's the thing about Chinglish. You can't make a shirt. You can't do it. I would challenge you to write something that is as wrong as Chinglish. It is, if you are a native speaker of English, your brain, even when you're making gibberish, doesn't make gibberish the way they can make gibberish. I can't even remember any of the shirts my wife had, and I laughed hilarious, and I had some of my own, hilariously funny. And every time I'd see them, I would laugh, but I could not 15 minutes later tell you what it said because my brain just simply refuses to put the words in the order that they are on the page. I saw an article once that was pointing out that even though we don't teach these rules, there is a rule to the order you put adjectives in front of nouns.
Yes.
And people will automatically fall into that pattern time and time again. The big green dog. It's never the green big dog. Just isn't. You don't do it that way. And that's kind of what it's like. So it's hard to write gibberish. Somebody had to type gibberish.
Yes.
I mean, not saying that, they're Taiwan level gibberish there, but somebody had to type gibberish. It's harder to write gibberish than it is to just type down stuff that isn't gibberish. So who is the poor soul who had to make up the rest of the gibberish paper?
I wondered about that. It's just like,
It's not like lorem ipso that you can just fill in with a word
Yeah.
processor now.
If you pull up the screen capture I sent you a couple weeks ago, or whatever it was, and you just start and you magnify it, you look at it, and it's like the words make sense in the order they're in, but
But they're not saying
it's
anything,
not
yeah.
saying anything. I'm thinking, who had the job of writing that? Wow.
Somebody whose first job in Hollywood. I'm a writer. I'm a Hollywood writer. I wrote the newspaper in the episode Nightmare, The
Yeah.
Invaders. Check it out.
Yeah.
On DVD and Blu-ray. I wish it was on Blu-ray. Make it a lot easier. Yeah. Yeah, that's my biggest this story.
It's just a
I
cat.
love the premise. I love the premise of this story, but I
I wonder
there are some holes in it.
what is the point of this plan?
To starve, it's a good question. I'm guessing it's to starve out the United States. You can break down society if nobody has any food to eat. And I think in particular in the 1960s, the Midwest was not just the United States powerhouse, but the world powerhouse.
The breadbasket of the world.
Yeah. There are other places like Soviet Georgia, I believe, is one of the breadbaskets, but they had their problems being Soviet.
Yes. So then this
Yeah,
would starve out some other parts of the world too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And if the United States falls into disarray because they can't feed their people, what happens? And this is, we're the good guys. I'm just going to come out and say, we're the United States. We're the good guys. But, if we were starving, what we would do?
Yes.
We'd invade Canada or Mexico or somewhere else. I mean, if we needed food, we would do it for all our high-minded ideals.
Well, we do it for oil.
Yes, we do it now for oil. So, sure, we do it for food. And and of course, you would also have a lot of internal strife where people were perhaps riots, perhaps, could be mass death from famine. That's going to keep the authorities busy. In 1960s, I think, you could be forgiven in thinking that the world might fall into turmoil if the United States toppled. Because, who else would protect you from those evil, nasty Soviets? And I'm pretty sure the invaders will have no problem taking down the Soviets. And why aren't they?
I wondered, here's something I've wondered about the series, because I realized people filmed it in and around Southern California.
My guess that was
and
the Imperial Valley.
yes, and I did look up the setting, but it's around Hollywood. It's a studio backlot town.
Not some of those, not those fields, but
Yeah, somewhere, yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, so somewhere around there. But so all these locations were doubling as places in the United States because David Vincent had to be able to get there. But think about this: if we take the premise of the series seriously, then there are invaders all over the world,
Probably.
including behind the Iron Curtain.
Or, and hear me out.
Yes.
America's the only one that counts. I say that tongue in cheek, but, to the mindset of 1960s, take us down, the rest of the world's nothing. There is that. I don't know. It's possible that Vincent will go to other countries at some point, but, they're going to look like Southern California, like in these fields where you could see the mountains in the distance. It's like you don't see that in Kansas.
No, you don't. By the way, fun
and-
scientific. Speaking of Kansas, a little aside. There is the website improbable.org
Is that where they
has
talk about the mountain in Kansas?
has offers scientific evidence that Kansas is flatter than a pancake.
Well, it's not. Well, I don't know. Pancakes aren't actually that flat if you think about it. They got all that yeasty and rising and stuff. But yeah, Kansas is flat. Yeah, I'll give it that. That is some geographically scraped clean by glacier. It's like, yeah.
But here, I wrote this down. The filming location, at least for the town, was at Samuel Goldwyn Studio, West Hollywood.
Okay. Where did that come from?
That came from the IMDb page.
The IMDb page that immediately right after it says we don't have any information on filming locations from this.
Well,
Because I saw that, and I think the whole series is filmed at Sam Goldwyn backlot.
yeah, but for this episode, and I did look up.
That's definitely not Los Angeles.
Yes, but I do get interested when they go into a town somewhere, and I like to pull up the town on Google Earth and look at it, and because I'm that compulsive. But in this case, it's just a studio lot.
Yeah, I think that's in error. I'm pretty sure that's in error. I'm pretty sure that's a real town, small town in California, because Quinn Martin Productions was famous for using location footage a lot.
Okay.
They were big on it. Just like the town in the pilot in Beachhead. Yes. Right? I mean, it's in the area, but they're out there. They don't have a double silo on their back lot at Sam Goldwyn. And I don't buy it. That's they when they were standing in those fields and you could look out a long, long way into the distance and it was nothing. It was not Los Angeles.
Well, the field, yes, but I mean the town itself, because I do know that a number of these studios had those town streets with the houses on them, and people could film entire series if they wanted, or at least much of them, just on the city streets.
I went looking for the locations because I wouldn't say I spend a huge amount of time in California, but I've spent more time in California than any other state, except for Arizona, and obviously, and that felt like the Imperial Valley. But there are a couple of other places along the way that are similar between that and Los Angeles, and they would have stayed as close as they could. But anyway, so one of the things that does not make sense in this story, that's not quite the right word for it, but one of the things that feels like another pass might have been needed was that whole opening and closing narration that talks about how little towns like Grady basically don't like outsiders. And come back to that theme of Mr. Newble being a perennial outsider, perhaps. But, okay, I've lived in a small town. You know, sure, there's a little bit of that. There's definitely the, oh, he's just a newcomer. He's only lived here 15 years kind of mindset. So Vincent rolls into town and they're all like, ooh, Vincent, out of town guy. So what are they thinking about the fact that the constable, the deputy, the principal, the Danielsons, the little old lady have all come in within the last 4 months?
I was wondering about that. Because on this, if you don't think about this too deeply, making the towns...
We'll have a podcast if we don't.
Yeah, exactly. I know. If you don't think about this more than 2 seconds, then making the townspeople so hostile does make it more difficult initially to tell who is an invader and who is just a hostile townsperson. But then you point out all these people have come in the last 4 or so months, and then they seem fairly well established.
And Gabbard bought a farm and brought in his family to work it.
Yes.
And they aren't mixers.
Yeah, I remember that.
Like, it feels like a thing. And let's face it, Ed does not need to be hostile to outsiders to dislike Vincent.
No, Vincent is unlikable in the way he's badgering the teacher. And this.
But the fact that he's just protective of Ellen, even if he wasn't badgering her, he just like, she's been through enough. Leave her alone. Go away. He of all the people in this town has a perfect excuse, and you can't. I'm not gonna, go there. But the rest of the town wasn't necessarily all that hostile to him. Even Ames wasn't at first. He was protective. He was acting protective of Ellen, or he appeared to be acting protective of Ellen. But, he was playing his part better than Ed was, in a way. because you go, oh, Ed must be the invader. It's like, no, not necessarily. I think Ed's
Yeah.
just an idiot, you know?
Oh, that reminds me here. I have the IMDb page for the episode up on the other computer screen. And Robert M. Hart portrayed Mr. Ames, the invader. And as it turns out, he was one of those character actors, and he specialized in villains. So,
Oh, yeah, he did.
yeah,
Yeah.
he got perfect casting on this one. He smiles and I don't trust him.
Yeah. They've got, and wouldn't surprise me if he's in a lot of other Quinn Martin productions, because they have their little stable of actors that they love to come back to over and over again,
Let
that
me
play
see.
certain types of parts.
I can check that right now. He was, let's see what, he was in one episode of The Streets of San Francisco.
That's one.
He was, let me see what else was Quinn Martin here.
The Fugitive, the FBI,
He was in
Shannon, Barnaby Jones.
he was in the FBI. He was,
Man Called Sloan.
yes, he was in Mannix.
I don't think Mannix is. I think
Okay.
I used to think Mannix was, and I think it's not. I think it was a
Okay.
competing company, but very similar.
Very similar. He is in a
Lots of
number
stuff.
of the show. He was in 2 episodes of The Wild Wild West.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I've seen him all the time. He's got that solicitous but probably evil kind of character.
He was in 2 episodes of The Man from U.N.C.L.E., 2 episodes of Andy Griffith. He was in Daniel Boone. He was in Gunsmoke, Land of the Giants. That's Erwin Allen, I know. He was in 3 episodes of Bonanza. He was, as I said, a character actor.
Yeah. Yep. I recognize all of these people in this episode, except maybe Gabbard. He's not terribly familiar, but so we have the obviously animated scenes of the locusts, and I don't know. I feel a little bit like they tried to go with a little bit of Hitchcock, a little bit of the birds, a little bit of North by Northwest.
Yeah, I see that.
But not very well. I mean, these locusts are kind of lame. You run through a door, close the door, shut the window, brush them off.
Hitchcock's
And
locust
there you
would
Birds would have kept trying.
have been
Yeah.
coming through the door eventually.
Yeah. Smacking it with their beaks and pounding it through. So
Yes.
then the locust could have just eaten the wood. So
yes,
they could have gotten him.
And of course, we mentioned North by Northwest. It's Cary Grant in that indestructible suit running through the field, trying to avoid the crop duster.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't exactly. It's not exactly a parallel in either case, but it was evocative of both of those films to me at the time I was watching it. Now, here's a scene that is right out of 1960s television that it's like, okay, I can see this. I can totally see this. So there is the scene where Vincent is in a completely empty diner, okay, except for the owner
Right.
or the guy working it, right? And he calls the state police. And they, of course, in turn call the local police because that's not a state police job. He should have said he was worried about the state police. We never hear what he actually told him to make the cop go, oh, all right, we'll get somebody around there then. Like the sheriff's trying to kill me or the constable's trying to kill me. Or he should have said something, but he didn't. So they call the constable. The constable's coming. He sees the constable. So he runs back to where the phones are. Where are the phones? Phone or phones?
It's usually on the.
That's our first question.
Yes.
Is there one phone or is there two?
Remember that detail.
Well, because you never see more than one phone, because the one phone is actually inside the men's room.
Yeah.
Is there a phone inside the ladies' room?
We never saw it.
Have you ever seen a phone inside the toilets?
No.
Neither have I. But okay, Vincent goes back, he steps into the men's room, he uses the phone. But there's a little anti-way out there. So there's a back door, there's a men's room, there's a ladies' room. And Vincent goes back there And does he run out the back door? I'm not sure. But Gabbard shows up. He asks the clerk, the diner clerk, whatever he's called, where he goes, hey, want to back that way. And he runs in there. He looks at the back door. He pokes his head in the men's room, looks around. Is Vincent in there? No, he's not in there. Ah, darn, he got away. And I'm thinking, I'd be hiding in the ladies' room.
Who's going to go looking in there?
Yeah, that's right. He did not even think to look in the ladies' restroom because no guy would ever go in there. I mean, that's not going to happen. No way. That's beyond social norms, people. It's like I think I would. I don't know. I mean, I know there's no one else in the diner. There's nobody in that bathroom, so that might be a place to hide because Gabbard might have put somebody out to check out the back door if he'd been smart. But I mean, Vincent didn't have much choice, but still, Gabbard didn't even think to look in there. So even the invaders have that unwritten taboo. Can't go into the ladies' room.
There you go. Product of its time. And speaking of the state police, we were just talking there. That reminded me of something. I have noticed a trope, just in these few episodes I've watched so far, that Vincent keeps calling the state police.
Well, I think in every situation, Vincent knows that the invaders have invaded the local police.
Yes, and so he calls the state police. I just noticed that there's this pattern. I start connecting the lines and see patterns.
Do you have state police?
We have something called the Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
Hey, we don't have state police in Arizona.
I mean, and they come
we got a Department of Public Safety, but that's basically highway patrol.
Yes, we have highway patrol, and we have the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, but there is no Georgia State Police.
Yeah, I think that's a shorthand for call a higher level of copping.
Yeah, the GBI has jurisdiction in cases that cross county lines, and they also investigate any officer-involved shooting. Automatic jurisdiction.
Yeah, see, it's going to vary from state to state, but if you don't give them reason that they have to be involved, they are going to turn it over to the local authorities.
Yes,
I mean that's just what they're going to do. They're right. They don't have the jurisdiction to go barge into that town unless they're investigating the police themselves. And if Vincent doesn't make that case, they're not going to do anything but exactly what they did.
Actually,
the final scene.
Yes.
Vincent has gone to Ellen and Ed, and they're like, hey, come on, you got to go to the FBI. You got to tell them what you saw. It's like, but there's no proof, man. They're just going to laugh at us, and they're going to call us crackpots, and I can't go through that again. Can't you understand that? And Vincent's like, no, I can't understand it. I was like, really? You can't understand that? Mr. the Crackpot Architect? You can't understand that?
This is another reason the script needed another pass.
Just in the episode Genesis, the cop wanted to go to the feds. And Vince is like, nah, we got no evidence. Don't bother. They'll just treat you like a loony.
I mean, inconsistent writing. This is why there are script editors for...
Well, there are now.
Yes, they're supposed to be, right?
I mean, there was a script editor, I'm sure, for this one too, but I don't think it's not quite the same job as it is now. That's all I got on this episode.
I have one more issue. Does Ed live in that house?
I love that house. I made mention of that in my blog post as a random thing. That is either that house that they use, the exterior of the house that they use, is either an actual practical house in a small town somewhere that they just thought this is great, and it is like the best, that's the one, that's the house, or it is the best piece of set dressing I've ever seen, because that looks so much like a house that a guy is renovating.
It does.
He's getting married. He's building a new house. I don't know if he lives there or not, but I can totally see that he is getting that house ready. Of course, the inside's obviously a studio, but I loved the detail of that house. Just looking at it. Like, I don't know why his phone works if he's not living there. So it probably is. But he doesn't strike me as the kind of guy that would have too much trouble living in paint fumes.
I get your point there. He just, right. I get it. I just wondered, does he live there? Did he live somewhere else in town? Was he getting this ready? I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know what he does for a living either. Maybe he's a handyman. Maybe he's a guy that just does that for a living. The one thing about it, though, that is okay, fine. Right? He's getting his house ready to get married, but they actually give a detail that a year ago they were already on the verge of getting married. He should have had the house ready then.
Yes. Another pass. What's he been doing for a year? Maybe fixing up other people's houses. I don't.
Yeah. He's got to make a living.
Yep.
Got to make a living. Does this one in his spare time. So, yeah. Anyway. Our next episode of The Invaders is Doomsday -1.
Yes, I wrote that down.
Yes, I don't remember what it's about, and then I'll find out when I go look at it. But Doomsday -1, I'm sure it's something to do with doomsday.
It sounds like a weapon in there somewhere.
Well, 1960s is probably a nuclear weapon. Ooh, okay. That's an interesting idea. We'll have to come back to that one. When I look at it, it's like, what good would destroying the planet do to the aliens?
But
like you want the planet. You just don't want the people on it.
Yeah. And there's the whole question of what are the aliens really? So they have what's their physiology?
Maybe they could live in the radiation. Who knows? Radiation slag. It's just like home. Why did we ever leave? Well, you'd think they could find a chunk of land like that somewhere in space.
We'll talk about that one next time.
Exactly. Kenneth, thank you for joining me.
My pleasure.
And listeners, I do hope you'll join us all again next time on Fusion Patrol. This has been Fusion Patrol. Thanks for listening. If you're enjoying this podcast, we hope you'll consider supporting us at buymeacoffee.com/fusionpatrol or patreon.com/fusionpatrol. For our Patreon subscribers, we're currently running a special series on Babylon 5. Come join the conversation and find other content at fusionpatrol.com. You can contact us on social media where our Fediverse address is @podcast@fusionpatrol.com or by email at feedback@fusionpatrol.com. Fight the Future by Amberwolf is our theme music. You can find more from Amberwolf at bandcamp.com. This has been a Lone Locust production.